This is the Turf Zone Podcast, your central information and news hub, bringing together professionals from turf associations across multiple states to share things to help you in your business. Brought to you in partnership with our friends at the Alabama Turfgrass Association. Now, let's get in the zone.
Welcome to the Turf Zone. In this episode of Alabama Turfgrass, we feature an article titled Building a Four-Season Approach to Warm Season Turfgrass Management by Dave Hahn, Ph.D., Auburn University, and Alabama Extension. Anyone who has ever managed turfgrass, whether in their own lawn or professionally, will have lots of questions. In my experience, the word that pops up most frequently in questions about turf management is when. We've all asked or been asked, when should I fertilize? When do I put out my preemergence herbicide? When is the right time to sprig, seed, and sod? When should I take a soil test? When should I irrigate? The list goes on. Since so many questions relate to timing, calendars are a very popular product to tell people when to do certain things. Calendars can be very useful, but they are not foolproof. Mother Nature does not always provide weather that fits the calendar date. And since so many decisions about turf management are driven by temperature, rainfall, and humidity, or should be, there's no substitute for looking at actual thermometers and rain gauges before making decisions. But what I think can be valuable is a more general, seasonal guideline of what to expect, what to look out for, and how to plan, so that when a particular season comes around, turf managers are making good decisions on a monthly or weekly timescale. Since the Alabama turfscape is dominated by warm season grasses, this article will focus on those. Spring. Spring is usually the hardest season to deal with because it brings unpredictable weather. Wild temperature swings, severe weather outbreaks, and a human tendency to want to rush things can all lead to making some bad calls when it comes to spring turf management. Spring is the season when warm season grasses begin their growth after dormancy or semi-dormancy in the winter, when summer annual weeds begin to germinate, and when winter annual weeds are their most noticeable and troublesome. It's also when plans should be made to plant sprigs or seed of warm season grasses. The main factors to consider in the spring are when to apply post-emergence herbicides to control winter annual weeds, when to apply pre-emergence herbicides for summer annual weed control, and when to begin fertilizing the turfgrass. All of these decisions will be influenced heavily by air and especially soil temperatures. Table 1 provides an overview of some important soil temperatures that affect management decisions. Timing becomes tricky as soil temperatures will vary wildly from year to year, and even swing up and down within weeks in any given spring. What happened last year may not have much to do with the appropriate timings for this year's management timings, especially when it comes to herbicide treatments. Pre-emergence herbicides should ideally be made before the conditions are right for weed seed germination. Some years the soil will warm quickly and applications will need to be made in January. Other years they may wait until late February. Also, since there is such a variety of soil temperatures at which various weeds germinate, multiple applications of pre-emergence may be needed depending on which weeds are problems for any given turf. Applying post-emergence herbicides can be done very early in the spring, providing that the air temperature at the time of application is above 55 degrees Fahrenheit. When it is cooler, the efficacy of post-emergence herbicides is greatly reduced. Special caution should be used when the warm season grass is in the middle of green-up, just coming out of the dormancy. Many warm season grasses can be damaged by herbicides at this time, even though they are perfectly tolerant when actively growing. I recommend avoiding all post-emergent herbicides if possible while the turf is greening up. When this happens and how long it lasts, again, varies from year to year. Let a soil thermometer be your guide. When the soil temperature hits 70 degrees Fahrenheit, it's likely safe to apply post-emergence as usual. Figure 1 shows a centipede grass lawn in Auburn, Alabama that was still in mid-green-up phase in the middle of May 2020 due to an extended warm but not hot spring that year. As temperatures warmed at the end of May, the lawn was fully green and growing by June 1st. Fertilizer, specifically nitrogen, should not be applied too early. If it's too cool to support grass growth, fertilizers will be used by weeds instead of the turf. Timing is especially important when using soluble, quick-release fertilizers. Slow-release fertilizers can usually be applied at any time, as they tend to release more nitrogen when the soil is warm, which is when the grasses will use more nitrogen. Summer. Once the soil temperature is consistently in the 70s and the air temperature is hitting 90 regularly, it's time to think about summer turf care. The major issues with most turf grass during the summer are irrigation, how much and how often, weed control, especially of summer annual broadleaves, and how much fertilizer to apply. Most warm season grasses will use between 1 and 1.5 inches of water per week during the summer months. This does not mean that the grass will need to have 1 and 1.5 inches of irrigation applied each week. The primary aim of irrigation should be to supplement natural rainfall. A rain gauge is your best friend when irrigating, while a calendar is your worst enemy. In an Alabama summer, weeks may go by with no need for irrigation at all on native soil lawn. Applying too much irrigation not only wastes water, but also can promote disease and weeds, moss, and algae in turfgrass. Professional turfgrass managers also want to monitor the moisture content of the soil using a commercial moisture probe and meter. Golf course putting greens and athletic fields often are kept drier and firmer than a lawn for better playability, so it's important to monitor soil moisture closely. The exact water content that works best for a given green or field without causing wilting will have to be determined locally. Many times this will be somewhere between 15% to 20%, but again, this will need to be worked out for each location individually. Many summer annual weeds can continue to germinate all summer long in very warm soil. So for controlling weeds like doveweed, spurgus, chamber bitter, etc., a summer pre-emergence herbicide application may be necessary. These weeds can be killed post-emergence too, but the continuing seed germination means that a post-emergent herbicide will need to be applied monthly during the summer to keep summer annuals at bay. Fertility requirements vary widely depending on grass species and the amount of traffic. For general lawns, the recommended rate of nitrogen to apply during the growing season is Bermuda grass, 3 to 5 pounds nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. St. Augustine grass, 3 to 4 pounds nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Zoysia grass, 1 to 2 pounds nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Centipede grass, 0 to 1 pounds nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. More, sometimes much more, nitrogen will be used on golf courses and athletic fields with heavy traffic. Nitrogen should be applied at 1 pound of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Be aware that higher nitrogen rates will mean more mowing. See Figure 2 for an example of how nitrogen rate affects mowing frequency in Bermuda grass lawns. Phosphorus and potassium should be applied according to soil test recommendations. There's no substitute for a soil test to determine whether turf needs these nutrients and how much. The same is true for lime requirements. Fire ants are pests any time that grass is growing, but especially in the summer. Baits are the most cost-effective way of managing fire ants, but they must be used correctly. Baits only work if they are spread while fire ants are out looking for food. If it's too hot, they may not be foraging and will not pick up bait. Test to see if fire ant workers are active by placing a potato chip or hot dog on the grass and waiting for 10 minutes. If the food is covered in fire ants, it is a good time to spread bait. Fall. As air temperatures and soil temperatures drop in the fall, warm season turf managers should be thinking about pre-emergence applications for controlling winter weeds, overseeding, athletic fields in particular, and tapering off fertilizer application. Perhaps the most troublesome winter annual weed is annual bluegrass, Poa annua. Many times, Poa is the main winter weed, and it can be difficult to control because of its wide genetic variability. The extreme variety of Poa means that there are some Poa populations that can germinate in very warm soil, upper 70s or warmer, some that can germinate in cool to cold soil, lower 50s or cooler, and some that germinate in all temperatures in between. This means that Poa germinates for a long time in the fall, winter, and early spring, so repeat applications of preemergence herbicides are often needed. When soil temperatures drop into the low 70s, it's time to start thinking about the first preemergence application for Poa. Another problem with Poa is that some populations have developed resistance to almost all of the modes of action that are available in preemergence herbicides. Rotating modes of action can help, but if you are cursed with resistant Poa, then plan on a lot of post-emergent sprays as well. Overseeding with ryegrass is common on athletic fields, especially fields that will see heavy use while the grass underneath is dormant, such as baseball, softball, and soccer fields. Perennial ryegrass is the main species used to overseed athletic turf, and it will germinate when the soil temperature drops into the 60s. See Table 1. Overseed rates may vary based on location and budget, but around 400 to 600 pounds per acre is a good baseline for an athletic field. More seed will be needed for heavily used fields. Remember to save seed to fill in damaged spots. When overseeding, do not fertilize the ryegrass until a week or two after it is up and growing. This will ensure that the ryegrass is able to absorb the fertilizer, not the warm season grass. Ryegrass typically will need 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet during an overseed season. Be sure not to over-irrigate while establishing overseed. Keep the seeds moist, but do not saturate the soil. Fall is also a time when diseases can be an issue in warm season turf, excepting putting greens, of course, which see disease problems all the time. As the grass growth slows down, turf is more susceptible to fungal infections. This is the most noticeable in areas that do not drain well or are over-irrigated. Managing water is critical to keeping disease under control. Remember that warm season grasses need less water in the fall than in the summer. Keeping the irrigation at summer levels often causes problems. Fertilizer applications should also taper as the soil cools. Remember that warm season grasses need soil temperatures in the 70s for good root and rhizome growth. As the soil cools below 70, nitrogen applications should end. Potassium could still be applied if soil tests indicate a need. Fall is also a good time to apply lime, as it will react over the winter. Winter. Dormant turf may not need as much care as actively growing turf, but several issues recur every year. Winter weed control, besides POA, especially lawn burrweed, colder than normal temperature concerns, and warmer than normal temperature concerns. Winter broadleaf weeds include lawn burrweed, which has been especially problematic in recent years. This weed germinates in cool soils, 60s Fahrenheit, usually in the late fall, but grows all winter. It's easy to miss in the winter because of its low growth habit. It becomes a major problem in the spring after it flowers and sets fruit, because the fruits have sharp spines which injure people who step or fall on them. Winter is a great time to scout for burrweed plants and kill them before they make the spiny fruits. Figure 3 shows a young lawn burrweed plant as it appeared in November 2020. Most of the commercially available post-emergence herbicides for broadleaf control will kill lawn burrweed. Post-emergence herbicides can be tank mixed with a pre-emergence herbicide to provide control in the late winter after a fall application has worn off. Some years, cold weather presents a threat of winter kill. Although it is rare to have widespread winter kill on zoysia grass or Bermuda grass lawns in Alabama, it does happen occasionally. Putting greens with Bermuda grass can be more affected by cold weather, and covers have been shown to prevent winter damage. Covers do have drawbacks. They are labor-intensive to install and remove, and they must be removed to avoid trapping humidity and heat during the day and increasing disease pressure. Warmer than usual temperatures cause their own problems. One major issue with warm winters is that it can cause weed seeds to germinate earlier than normal. This means that turf managers are caught unprepared to deal with weeds that they are not expecting to appear so early in the year. Disease issues are also more prevalent during warm winters, especially if the weather is also wetter than usual. A seasonal mindset can help to mitigate problems that can occur when reality does not match our calendar. Knowing what to expect and how that can change in each season lets turf managers anticipate their needs better and provide better turf year-round. For all photos, figures, and resources associated with this article, please check out our show notes. Don't miss an episode of Alabama Turfgrass. Subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit us at theturfzone.com.
You've been listening to The Turf Zone. For more episodes of The Turf Zone, visit theturfzone.com and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app.